Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Yamuna Grantaraja Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande. Om Jnana Timirandasya Vinanjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manavishtam Sahitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yukta Bhagavatam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sarvajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vikantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Namah Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavani Paschatya Deshadarine Manchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Bhakta Kanchana Gaurani Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishvavanusute Pranamami Hari Priya Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Giraye Nashta Praishvavagreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shoke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Waiting for when he starts to speak. Oh, no. Maybe we could start with you saying a few words about what we are up to this morning.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Maharaj. Actually, we have particularly positioned and chosen this day to launch a little bit of a new initiative here at the Zurich Temple, and because we knew you were going to be present here for today, we thought this was a very auspicious occasion to begin what we've called Scientific Saturdays. We'll talk a little bit more about what we hope to accomplish through these Bhagavatam classes. But I'd first just like to give my appreciation and thanks to the temple devotees here. First of all, Damodar Prasad, who was willing to entertain the idea of having a forum for discussing some of the aspects of Krishna consciousness which connect with science and philosophy, particularly, as they are presented often in Western and world culture now, in order to equip the devotees, strengthen their faith, help them understand the brilliance of the Srimad Bhagavatam and our scriptures and Srila Prabhupada's mission, and to be strengthened in their ability to discuss, present, even debate these topics with people they meet. So Damodar Prasad took it to the temple board here, and they very kindly gave some encouragement. There was a session that we had with Govinda Prabhu and Bhakta Lucas, and in that we discussed what would be the best forum for this. And we have to credit Govinda for what I took as a rather brilliant, inspired suggestion, that we find a place within the Bhagavatam schedule, and perhaps Saturday mornings every 2 weeks. This is a Bhagavatam class that we will study the Bhagavatam, but we will look at verses particularly pertinent to these topics, and then open it up for discussion. So today is the launch of this initiative, so we hope that it will be a regular feature every 2 weeks on the Saturday morning Bhagavatam class. I'll talk more about the content, but now we should pass back to Maharaj for to launch us into the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's officially open.
It's officially open. Cut the ribbon. A ribbon cutting. Okay. Well, without further ado, we will proceed. And Akandadhi Prabhu has selected for us a relevant, especially relevant verse for this launching. This is Canto 1, Chapter 2, Divinity and Divine Service, and this is text number 20, so we can chant together. Evam prasanna manaso,
Evam prasanna manaso,
Evam prasanna manaso,
Evam prasanna manaso,
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha,
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha,
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha,
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha,
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam,
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam,
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam,
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam,
Mukta Sangasya Jayate,
Mukta Sangasya Jayate,
Mukta Sangasya Jayate,
Mukta Sangasya Jayate,
Evam Prasanna Manaso,
Evam Prasanna Manaso,
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha,
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha,
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam,
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam,
Mukta Sangasya Jayate,
Mukta Sangasya Jayate,
Evam Prasanna Manaso,
Evam Prasanna Manaso,
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha,
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogata,
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam,
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam,
Mukta Sangasya Jayate,
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
Evam prasanna manaso,
Evam prasanna manaso,
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha,
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha,
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam,
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam,
Mukta Sangasya Jayate,
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
Evam prasanna manaso,
Evam prasanna manaso,
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogata,
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogata,
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam,
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam,
Mukta Sangasya Jayate,
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
Evam prasanna manaso,
Evam prasanna manaso,
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha,
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha,
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam,
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam,
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
Evam prasanna manaso,
Evam prasanna manaso,
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha,
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha,
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam,
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam,
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
Evam prasanna manaso,
Evam prasanna manaso,
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha,
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha,
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam,
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam,
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
So what does it mean? Evam,
Evam,
thus,
thus,
prasanna,
prasanna,
enlivened,
enlivened,
manasa,
manasa,
of the mind,
of the mind,
Bhagavat Bhakti,
Bhagavat Bhakti,
the devotional service of the Lord,
the devotional service of the Lord,
Yogata,
Yogata,
by contact of
by contact of
Bhagavat,
Bhagavat,
regarding the personality of Godhead,
regarding the personality of God,
Tattva,
Tattva,
knowledge,
knowledge,
Vijnanam,
Vijnanam,
scientific,
scientific,
Mukta,
Mukta,
liberated,
liberated,
Sangasya,
Sangasya,
of the association,
of the association,
Jayate,
Jayate,
becomes effective.
becomes effective.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. Purport: in the Bhagavad Gita 7.3, it is said that out of many thousands of ordinary men, one fortunate man endeavors for perfection in life. Mostly men are conducted by the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus they are engaged always in lust, desire, hankerings, ignorance, and sleep. Out of many such man-like animals, there is actually a man who knows the responsibility of human life and thus tries to make life perfect by following the prescribed duties. And out of many thousands of such persons who have thus attained success in human life, one may know scientifically about the personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna. In the same Bhagavad Gita, 1855, it is also said that scientific knowledge of Sri Krishna is understood only by the process of devotional service, bhakti yoga. The very same thing is confirmed herein in the above words. No ordinary man, or even one who has attained success in human life, can know scientifically or perfectly the personality of Godhead. Perfection of human life is attained when one can understand that he is not the product of matter, but is in fact spirit. And as soon as one understands that he has nothing to do with matter, he at once ceases his material hankerings and becomes enlivened as a spiritual being. This attainment of success is possible when one is above the modes of passion and ignorance, or, in other words, when one is actually a Brahmana by qualification. A Brahmana is the symbol of sattva guna, or the mode of goodness, and others who are not in the mode of goodness are either kshatriyas, vaishyas, shudras, or less than the shudras. The Brahminical stage is the highest stage of human life because of its good qualities. So, one cannot be a devotee unless one at least qualifies as a Brahmana. The devotee is already a Brahmana by action, but that is not the end of it. As referred to above, such a Brahmana has to become a Vaishnava, not a Vaishya, a Vaishnava. In fact, to be actually in the transcendental stage. A pure Vaishnava is a liberated soul and is transcendental even to the position of a Brahmana. In the material stage, even a Brahmana is also a conditioned soul, because although in the Brahminical stage, the conception of Brahman, or transcendence, is realized, scientific knowledge of the Supreme Lord is lacking. One has to surpass the Brahminical stage and reach the Vasudeva stage to understand the personality of Godhead, Krishna. The science of the personality of Godhead is the subject matter for study by the postgraduate students in the spiritual life. Foolish men or men with a poor fund of knowledge do not understand the Supreme Lord, and they interpret Krishna according to their respective whims. The fact is, however, that one cannot understand the science of the personality of Godhead unless one is freed from the contamination of the material modes, even up to the stage of a Brahmana. When a qualified Brahmana factually becomes a Vaishnava in the enlivened state of liberation, he can know what is actually the personality of Godhead. And so ends Srila Prabhupada's purport. The verse again, thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with the devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. I'll just say a few words saying something about the context within this chapter of this verse. And maybe I'll say something about the word science, but then I think Akandadhi Prabhupada has a lot to tell us about the word science and how it's understood. So, briefly, the word evam in the beginning of the verse is a signal that this is a continuation of what's been said before. Evam, thus. So there's been an explanation by Sutta Goswami of devotional service. He's basically giving a compact, kind of what I like to call a quick start edition, a quick start instruction on devotional service. We were speaking about how the nectar of instruction is a quick start guide. So this is also a quick start guide, although it's more, we may say, more philosophical in the sense it's analyzing how the process develops. And it's in this particular section of this chapter identifying in terms of overcoming the modes of nature. And so the previous verse says, tada, then, which suggests also there's something before this, then, tada, rajas tamo bhava kama lobha dayas chaye cheta etair anavidam stitam sattve prasidati, as soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart. So that's stitam, fixed, standing. Established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering, disappear from the heart. Anavidham. Then the devotee is established in goodness, stitam sattve, and he becomes completely happy, in Prabhupada's translation. Prasidati, thus becomes fully satisfied. We could back up further, maybe one verse, because we chant this typically when we start every Bhagavatam class, Nashta Prayeshva Vadmreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. And I can't resist to make a footnote point here, but Prabhupada's translation, by regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable or irrevocable fact. The beginning line, by regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam. This was sharply criticized by someone who I won't mention as being a complete speculation on the part of the VBT editors, not knowing that this is what Prabhupada originally wrote. So they were simply the editors were simply recovering what Prabhupada had originally put, and which the early editor had decided was maybe a bit too much or whatever. So that's just a little plug for BBT editing program. But the point is that it's emphasizing that there is a process, and this process, integral to this process of establishing Naishtiki Bhakti, fixed bhakti, is hearing the Bhagavatam when? Nityam, which can mean forever, or it can mean regularly. Nityam can mean just regularly. So, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. And then, tada, then, rising above the lower modes, becoming established in the mode of goodness, titam sattve prasidati, one becomes happy. And then, in today's verse, evam, thus, prasanna manaso, with the mind being, Prabhupada translates here, enlivened, prasanna, Brahmabhuta prasannatma na sochati na kamchati, it says in the Gita, which Prabhupada alludes to in the purport. Then there is, what is the result of this? Bhagavat Tattva Vijnana. And the word Vijnana, we know Jnana means usually translated knowledge. Vijnana, Prabhupada is here translating as scientific, and it's sometimes translated as wisdom or practical knowledge or the application of jnana, where the word jnana is cognate, or the other way around. The word gnosis, the Greek word gnosis, is the cognate of jnana, and then I guess that becomes maybe sort of transferred into Latin, and it becomes scientia, isn't it? Or is that making too big a jump? He'll correct us on that. It sounded good to me.
Yeah,
So this gets to the point of our discussion this morning. Bhagavad Tattva Vijnana. The word tattva, Prabhupada is translating here as knowledge. It comes from tat. The word tat has a huge, it's a kind of super multi-purpose word. Literally it just means that, but it's used in Sanskrit in a number of ways. And it's with this ending tva, it becomes an abstract noun, which makes it thatness. And thatness can also be it can come to mean something like categories. So having knowledge of categories. So knowing, for example, the category of matter as opposed to the category of spirit, or the category of jiva as opposed to, we say jiva tattva, Vishnu tattva, Shakti tattva. So in that context, especially the word tattva would mean category. And of course, what is it that is wanted to be known scientifically in terms of category? It's Bhagavan. That person who is the possessor, Van or Vant, of Bhagas, the shareholder. God is the supreme shareholder. He owns all the shares. All the shares of wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. That's God. That's the definition of God. And as a result, mukta sangasya jayate, Prabhupada translates jayate as becomes effective. And I'm fairly sure this is from the verbal root ji, which is to be victorious, and it's causative, so it's causing to be victorious. If one is following this practice of bhakti, there is a result, and I think this is where the notion of science, as we use it generally in modern English, and Prabhupada's understanding, our understanding of science, come together. When we do X, there will be Y result. At least this is one important aspect of our understanding of spiritual science. But maybe I get it all wrong, in which case we'll have the correction. So I'll stop there, and now it's your turn.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Maharaj. So I'm going to, I think a lot of what you said helps to set the scene for what we hope to achieve through these Bhagavatam classes. This is exactly what we're talking. We're talking about the science of Krishna, the science of understanding the soul, ourselves. It became very clear from, I think, to Srila Prabhupada over the years of his preaching in the West. When he first came, you'll know a lot of his lectures seem to be talking about the Mayavadis and their philosophy. And a lot of the devotees at the time, who are these Mayavadis, that Prabhupada really has a hard time with? Who's he talking about? What they didn't realize, of course, is we were all the Mayavadis, with our impersonalist tendencies. But Prabhupada came to the West and he gave his mantra, or his pranam mantra, Nirvishesha and Shunyavadi. Nirvishesha is without specifics, without categorization and quality. So that's the impersonal attitude or philosophy. Shunyavad, emptiness philosophy. It's often applied to Buddhism, but it's also physicalism. It's also material idea that there is no God, there is no other existence other than the physical. We're just here, and so that everything comes from nothing. That's Shunyavad. So it is very clear that in Prabhupada's latter years of his preaching with us, there was a change of focus. And he began to he was realizing that the real challenge in the Western world isn't so much bogey yogis and impersonalist philosophers, speaking about Mayavad, but it was the Shunyavad, physicalist scientists, or people speaking in the name of science and giving atheistic interpretations that are essentially empty and physical. So Prabhupada recognized that was the challenge and perhaps the largest stumbling block for people to easily accept the message of Krishna consciousness. And in 76, I think he was inspired by meeting a young aspiring devotee, Thuadam Singh, Dr. Thuadam Singh, who later became Sir Damodar. And Prabhupada spent many hours with him discussing scientific subject matters. And it was in 1976 that Srila Prabhupada established the third of his three organizations. There were three institutions set up by Srila Prabhupada. Obviously, Iskcon. The other one that's independent is the BBT. And the third one that's independent and is meant to stand on its own is the Bhaktivedanta Institute, formally incorporated with its own directors, separate from Iskcon, in order to carry out the particular mission of discussing and presenting issues of the Srimad Bhagavatam in relationship to modern science and philosophy. So that was in 76. So Prabhupada had sort of Damodar, and a call went out to the whole of Iskcon. Send us your PhDs, send us your scholars. And two more PhDs turned up. That was Madhava and Sadhaputta Prabhu's. But two other MAs, Kanadas and Bhakti Tirtha. So those five became the core of the Bhaktivedanta Institute when it was established in 1976. And in 1977, during the final month of Prabhupada's presence with us, there was a conference held in Vrindavan, the Life Comes from Life conference. And the devotee Sadhguru and sort of Damodar would be down there dressed in their suits, making presentations, and many very eminent scholars, scientists and professors had come to take part in this in the holy place of Vrindavan at the Krishna Balaram temple, only recently opened. So, but Prabhupada would require the devotees to come to his room every day in the evening and give a report on the conference. What did they say? And what did you say? How did you deal with that? So Prabhupada was very eager to see the Bhaktivedanta Institute established. And I was fortunate to have spent a little time with Swarup Damodar, later Maharaj, but more with Satiputta Prabhu when he came to study at the Cavendish Laboratory in Cambridge. He got a posting there in 1983-84, I think it was. This Cavendish Laboratory is famous. That's Crick and Watson's DNA place. So this is a major stronghold of physical kind of science. But Sadhguru was studying there under Professor Brian Josephson, who was actually very interested in consciousness as possibly non-material, but it was very much a lone voice at the time. So anyway, and later on in the 90s, I was part of the work for the TOVP when we were planning the exhibits and models and things with Sadhguru. So in recent years, it hasn't seemed that the BI has been very active. I think after the 90s into the thousands, it seemed that the energy of the BI and its output had really dwindled. It wasn't completely, there were still individual devotees and initiatives happening. And in the UK, we decided to form our own little band of devotees. We had 7 PhDs and PhD students from different biology, neuroscience, astrophysics. We formed what we call the Science and Philosophy Initiative, because we didn't think we were good enough to be the PI, or we didn't know how to go about being the PI, so we just thought, well, we're the Science and Philosophy Initiative. And we had some very interesting programs, and even had a session at Oxford University, the physics laboratory, involving Stuart Hameroff, who's one of the world experts, you could say, on consciousness, and Sir Roger Penrose, one of the top, he's a Nobel laureate now in physics and mathematics. So they came, we got to hang out with them, go for pizza, and discuss, various ideas. So we had our little kind of operation going. And from that, we developed what has come to be known as the Atma Paradigm, which was intended as a philosophical framework by which we could explore the topics of consciousness, life, what is matter, how consciousness and matter interact, and what that means in biology and physics and even cosmology. So, but we were just a little group on our own. The real progress came when we joined forces with the Bhaktivedanta Institute in Gainesville, which at the time was, their main focus was preserving Sadhgura's legacy and particularly bringing all his books back into publication. And they've done a brilliant job going through editing, compiling, and producing all the titles.
And archiving.
Yeah?
And archiving.
and archiving all his materials. So they had a very nice, tight group of very dedicated devotees, led by Brahmatirtha, who had never given up on his mission of Bhaktivedanta Institute, despite the fact that he does so much else for the world of Iskcon and devotees. But this has always been, his main kind of, he knows that it was so important to Srila Prabhupada. So we joined together, and in 2019, we arranged a conference, Consciousness and Science, and basically we put out a call to the whole world of devotees. Anyone who's interested in the issues of science and philosophy, please take part. Tell us what you're interested in. Tell us what you'd like to contribute. Can we bring together devotees, create connection, create communication, even create collaboration of work? And we had 50 scientific devotees of PhDs and MAs, seriously qualified devotees, took part in that conference. Now we've probably got over 100, and we have working groups. Just last weekend we had our, we call our neuro group, which is 30 PhD students working in neuroscience and biology and so on, coming together to discuss very detailed, intricate matters arising from the Bhagavatam, and looking at other scriptures as they can be confirmed by the Srimad Bhagavatam, and exploring very interesting aspects of what the brain does, how we understand it in terms of our Sankhya philosophy, how the Bhagavatam can actually illuminate so many of the problems that exist in science. The general message is that the scientists have got it sorted. Consciousness is just a product of the brain. It's, we've got life sorted. We know about genetics, It's all settled. There's absolutely no need for you to think about anything beyond this world, this physical world. There's no need. You don't need God. You don't need, spirit. You don't need anything. We've got it all sorted. That's the message. That's the message that Prabhupada wanted to hit. Because it ain't true. They actually haven't got anything on it. That's the shocking bit. Every question, every big question about existence and reality is wide open. And that's where we have to explore. So, we kind of came together, and we are now the Bhaktivedanta Institute for Higher Studies, because it's one branch, but we have this thing called the BI Connect, which basically is not trying to organize other scientists, but just saying this is an association, a sangha for devotee scientists and philosophers. And there's others who are not necessarily trained in those disciplines, but who feel it as a mission, and who take part in assisting and supporting the team. So it's growing. I mean, there's been nothing like this in the BI, since. And we as a kind of board of the BIHS, we came together to figure out what's our mission. And we clarified that we have 4 audiences. Our first audience and group that we have to cater for are our own scientists. Many of them are young. Many of them are they're starting to explore Krishna consciousness in their lives, and they're serious about it. But they have generally compartmentalized their spiritual life and their professional life. They can't bear to think the two together because it doesn't compute. There seems to be a tension or a contradiction in that. So what we're trying to show them is that no, you can embrace the fact that you're a scientist and a devotee, because there isn't a contradiction. Rather, you can use your scientific understanding and you will find that it is in harmony with Krishna consciousness. And now you can engage your skills and your knowledge and your background in the service of Krishna. So a lot of our work is working with the BI scientist devotees. But we know that Srila Prabhupada wanted us to look after the next group, which is the Iskcon Devotees. You know, many devotees have been bewildered by things they've read in the Bhagavatam and thought, oh, that doesn't compute, that doesn't square with what I learned at school or university, you know, and they become disillusioned perhaps, or confused to the point where they're not sure if they can continue to follow Krishna consciousness. And that's you know, so tragic. So we have to help the devotees in that respect. Help understand that you don't have to twist your mind to start believing something that's really weird. Everything the Bhagavatam says can be substantiated, and it can be understood and appreciated. But it may need a little help and a little guidance, as so much of what the Bhagavatam says needs guidance. And so we hope that we can increase faith. We hope that we can actually help appreciation of the Srimad Bhagavatam. You know, all those sections when you come to, you just kind of flick through Sankhya philosophy, you know, yeah, let's move on to the pastimes, you know, the bit that you think, yeah, no idea what that means, but anyway, keep going. Actually, there's some incredible passages, some incredible insights that we will hope to bring out to you in these sessions within the Bhagavatam, just to show you how brilliant a treatise on physics, on science, and everything that the Bhagavatam is. So the third group is the public. We want to reach the broader public. We need publications that mean something to them. And we need devotees trained in order to be able to chat and discuss these topics with the people that you meet, whether it's on book distribution, when they come to the temple, in every kind of environment. We need to help you understand the simple points that you can present to help others develop faith in Krishna. And the fourth group is the academic world. Obviously, we need to have some influence there. And that's not an easy world to deal with. The Oxford Centre that Maharaj has been involved with over all these years has done phenomenal work within the field of theology and philosophy, and clarifying history of Vaishnavism, all sorts of aspects, right in there in the heart of Oxford University. Amazing. Now, it's maybe a harder challenge to do it in the world of science, but things are changing in academia. It's really different. 20 years ago, they would not have entertained anything about consciousness other than it is a product of the brain. Now, all the discussions are, maybe we should be looking at panpsychism, the idea that everything's conscious. You know? That apparently is the discussion around the academic dinner tables. Panpsychism isn't there yet, but this is a huge change. They know the issues are open. We have opportunities. And within that, so we have this grid of 4 categories of audiences, and we have 3 aspects that we have to convey to them. And it comes from a verse in the 7th canto, Shrutam etan maya purvam Jnanam Vijnana Samyutam Dharmam Bhagavatam Shuddham Naradat Deva Darshanat. And Prabhupada in this verse uses the three disciplines. He says this knowledge is called Bhagavad Dharma. It's very similar to the verse we just studied, but this one doesn't have a purport, that's why we didn't use it. It's very similar to this verse. This is Bhagavad Dharma. This is the science and knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada says it is fully scientific. And it is based on logic and philosophy. And free from all material contamination. It shouldn't. So Prabhupada brings these together, the theology